Your mind is constantly coming up with new thoughts, one after the other. Sometimes these thoughts can happen so quickly we don't have time to even recognize if the thought was true or real, and so it's easy to assume that it is true. If you've ever experienced an intrusive thought, meaning you did not intentionally come up with the thought or image that came in your mind, you're not alone. Intrusive thoughts can come in many forms. You might have an image of accidentally hurting someone close to you, like a loved one or even a stranger. Maybe you have the sudden urge to say something inappropriate in a social setting. Or you might get an intrusive thought about doing something that goes completely against your values, like cheating on your spouse or harming an animal. Sometimes intrusive thoughts can cause anxiety and get us stuck in a loop of anxiety. If you start questioning why that thought came into your mind, abort, you've gone too far. Stick with me and I'll explain what I mean. I'm Daniel, the baking therapist, and today we're therabaking French dip and Swiss sandwiches from scratch and talking about what to do with intrusive thoughts. See, if I start wondering why a thought came to my mind, it's easy to begin to judge myself. For example, if I have a random image come to my mind of me hurting my child in some way, it might shock me or concern me. And if I begin to ask myself, why did I have that thought? Why did that thought come into my head? It's easy to go down a road of thinking maybe something's wrong with me. Do I deep down want to hurt my child? What if I did, even if it was an accident? Now I've had that thought, so how would I know if it's an accident, As you can see, it can increase my anxiety all about why I had the thought. Then I might be on guard for having similar thoughts later. But unfortunately, trying to not have a thought is near impossible. See, the thought becomes a threat to my nervous system, and my amygdala starts firing up, creating cortisol, a stress hormone, and potentially adrenaline. However, there is no real threat. So in order to effectively deal with intrusive thoughts, once it has become an anxious loop of thinking, we need to take the power away from the thought to trigger our nervous system. And we can do this in two ways. One, retrain our nervous system through exposure to the thought or the perceived threat, and learn that it isn't a threat. And two, reduce the weight of the thought as even potentially true by recognizing that the thought is just a thought. So exposure might look as simple as noticing I just had the thought of hurting my child flash into my head. I can notice the stress and anxiety rise in me through things like a fast heart rate, sweaty palms, or maybe I get fidgety. I can then allow myself to feel all of those things until the wave of anxiety subsides. Then when nothing happens, i.e., I don't immediately go hurt my child, my nervous system has to begin to reassess that thought as a threat. It doesn't have to be true. With multiple exposures to the stress and allowing myself to feel it, it will eventually reteach my nervous system to view it as less threatening, and my amygdala will no longer create cortisol. For the second part, to take some weight out of the thought, I might want to consider a few practices that will help me begin to recognize a thought is just a thought. So thoughts come and thoughts go, and I can learn to let them go. A simple practice might be spending a few minutes every day just noticing the thoughts that come in my brain and use the phrase, I'm having a thought that, This phrase will allow me to slow down my thinking enough to acknowledge the thought is just a thought. And with enough practice, I might be able to use the phrase when the distressing thought pops in my head. Another practice is called the train meditation, where I imagine I'm standing on a bridge overlooking train tracks that run underneath me. One train is the thoughts train. One is a feelings train. And we can add a third train for urges. Again, practice for a few minutes every day to notice any thoughts, feelings, or urges that might come in my brain and place them on the corresponding train, watching them fade away in the distance. For example, with this intrusive thought that might cause me some anxiety, I can, in my imagination, place the thought of hurting my child on the thought train. I might even place the feeling of anxiety on the feelings train and the urge to avoid my child so as not to hurt him or her on the urges train. As I allow myself to watch them be carried away, my brain can begin to recognize that these things come and go and are not as powerful and true as I may have once thought. This metaphor allows us to see the thoughts and feelings as transient, as they're not things we need to grab onto or act upon. By watching them ride off into the distance, we recognize that they come and go on their own and we don't have to take them as seriously. Over time, it helps us stop reacting emotionally to the thoughts and instead just let them pass. The last exercise to take away some power or weight of the thought is to imagine a cute little monster in your head with a squeaky voice as the one saying the thought. So rather than allowing myself to think, I might hurt my child, if I imagine a little monster say, you might hurt your child, it almost makes the thought seem silly, and I can flick away that little monster or just ignore it. See, this little monster technique may seem silly, but it's actually very effective in reducing the emotional charge of the intrusive thought. When we picture the cute little monster with the squeaky voice delivering the disturbing thought, it automatically becomes less serious. We're not trying to ignore it or push it away, but just changing how we perceive it. It's no longer a terrifying thought, it's just a silly idea being spoken by a quirky character in our mind. And the more we practice this, the more our brain starts to see the thought as harmless. I encourage you to take a week to practice one or two of these techniques. Either start with the train meditation or the cute little monster method, and track your thoughts and how they shift over time. The more you practice, the easier it will become to view these intrusive thoughts as just that, thoughts. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate the thoughts, but to take away their power over you. So comment which one you might want to try first. And all of these are meant to help take away any judgment or anxiety associated with a thought, which might take some level of curiosity. And if you'd like to hear more about the power of curiosity for mental health and relationship health, watch this video here.